we will still pursue redress because we are not equal in this economy. This economy is still male, white dominated. And you want to tell us to abandon policies that seek to advance transformation.
BEE failed us. It's time to build our own systems. Self-reliance is the only way to empower our people. Black economic empowerment was never meant to empower you. It wasn't hijacked. It was designed to benefit a few at the top, while the rest of us stayed in poverty. We've waited for too long for politicians to fix things. The truth is, they are not coming, and they were never the solution to begin with. The time has come to stop depending on political promises, broken policies, and fake empowerment. It's time to depend on ourselves. Self-reliance is the only way forward.
But let's look at what is practically happening on the ground. The Zondo Commission showed that BEE has been central to corruption in South Africa. Be it the 14 billion PPE corruption during COVID or the billions stolen through Eskom. A recent example, one of your own nephews, whose company scored contracts worth 381 million rand from Gauteng Hospital. And you write that it's not being felt by the majority of our citizens because BEE only benefits ANC-connected cronies. And it does so at the expense of everybody else, particularly the 35 million black South Africans who remain trapped in poverty. They suffer shoddy service delivery because of the inflated prices government must pay to BEE middlemen. Their 280,000 rand broom at Eskom is an example. Now, last week, Eskom board member Mteto Inyati spoke truth to power, and he said that BEE will have to go if there's to be any chance of ending South Africa's electricity crisis. Why are you still clinging to this failing policy and not focusing on an empowerment policy that lifts people out of poverty and into opportunity, that is broad-based, that's not race-based, that focuses on poverty and not making BEE fat cats, but lifting the millions of black people in this country who have no opportunity at all, out of poverty and into opportunity.
When BEE was introduced, we were told it would uplift the majority of black South Africans. But decades later, unemployment is still sky high, inequality is worse, and rural communities are still neglected. So what happened? The truth is BEE became a deal between the old white capital and new black elites, leaving out the very people it was meant to empower.
As we heard the other night, black economic empowerment wasn't an ANC innovation, but rather the product of an apartheid-era business strategy. Because by the time democracy came, powerful white capital had already decided how to manage black inclusion on their own terms. And it's not speculation, it's actually documented. I found a paper by Professor Inkarhi Verhoof that gives us the receipts. And when I spoke about Molethi Mbeki and his first encounters with BEE, it had some credibility to it. And BEE policy didn't happen at a conference. His introduction to BEE happened in 1991 with a conversation with Steph Notling in FD de Klerk's Department of Trade and Industry. He then proceeded to explain to Mbeki that the project, where white-owned companies give shares to black people, is aimed so that black people wouldn't confuse apartheid for capitalism.
If I can summarize his definition of black economic empowerment, his definition was that he said that white companies must give shares to black people so that the black people do not mistake apartheid with capitalism, so that they get educated that apartheid is not the same thing as capitalism.
To teach them to love capitalism. He then told Mbeki that this wasn't his idea, but that it actually came from Sanlam, the Afrikaner financial giant that once funded the very machinery of apartheid. And I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but in Verhoef's peer-reviewed economic history, published in 2013, titled The Invisible Hand, The Roots of Black Economic Empowerment, Sankorp, and Social Change in South Africa, 1985 to 2000. And what she found is chilling in its precision. Let's start with some background. Sanlam was not just a life insurance company. It was the beating heart of Afrikaner capital in the 20th century. It created a complex network of holding companies, including Suncorp, which held a significant stake in Gencor, Volkskas, Santam, and Federale Mainbou. Now, these ecosystems of companies became the core of what was known as Afrikaner big business. And in the 1980s, these companies were not just aligned with the apartheid state, they were the state in economic form. Santam's top executives openly supported the National Party and sat on strategic state advisory panels. But then came 1985, Rubicon speech, international sanctions, and a collapse in the rand. Business confidence was gone. And these white-owned companies, they realized that their survival depended on only one thing: peaceful transition to black political rule without the destruction of their financial empires. So they began planning. And Verhoef shows us how, from 1985 onwards, Sanlam made a strategic pivot. They realized that if Afrikaner capital wanted to survive the transition, they had to transform from an ethnic nationalist project to a race-neutral capitalist one. And that meant building black economic elites. Not just any elites, managerial elites. Individuals who would own stakes in white corporations without threatening how those corporations were fundamentally run. They aimed at stabilizing markets and managing risks. Sanlam and Suncorp began quietly recruiting black professionals, accountants, lawyers, business people, bringing them into investment vehicles that were fully designed and controlled by Sanlam. In 1993, before the ANC was even in power, Sanlam launched New Africa Investment Limited, or NAIL, with the goal of becoming the premier black-owned investment company. And who helped finance it? Sanlam. Who structured the deals? Sanlam. Who picked the leadership? Sanlam. So Professor Verwoerd makes something very clear to us, that Sanlam's early empowerment strategy was not a moral project. It was about continuity of control. They needed black shareholders to prevent populist backlash, but they didn't want to give up managerial power or control over capital allocations. So they designed BEE to be about ownership, not operational power. And here's the model. Take a white-owned asset, carve out a minority stake, finance it through debt, vendor funding, or preferred shares, and then place the stake in the hands of a politically connected black individual or consortium. Let them repay debts using dividends from the same company. And this structure ensured that black partners had skin in the game, but very little control. It also kept them financially dependent on the success of white-run corporations. It was empowerment on a leash. And yes, this model became the basis for post-1994 BEE deals across the country. By the time the ANC came into power in 1994, Sanlam and Suncorp had already prototyped BEE for nearly a decade. In fact, many of the early post-apartheid BEE pioneers were alumni of the Sanlam network. Verhoef even points out that these companies framed BEE as a joint nation-building project, masking what eventually formed an elite co-option. The ANC, grappling with economic uncertainty and budget deficits, saw these models as workable solutions for fast-tracking black ownership in the economy without direct state redistribution. So what Mbeki described in his anecdote earlier wasn't just a casual proposal from a bureaucrat. It was the culmination of nearly a decade of strategic planning by one of apartheid's most powerful economic engines. BEE wasn't invented in Lutuli House. It was licensed to them by white capital, ready to roll out. So then what does this actually mean? The very companies that profited under apartheid also engineered the terms of black inclusion after apartheid. Professor Verhoef's work shows us that BEE wasn't just a radical break from apartheid's capitalism. It was more like a continuation, a new game but with different referees.
The rich got richer. Politicians and their friends got board seats, tenders and shares. Meanwhile, the poor got speeches, empty promises and photo opportunities. BEE wasn't hijacked. It was an elite arrangement from day one. While we waited for jobs, they built empires for themselves. While we believed in transformation, they cashed in. But here's the good news. We don't have to wait anymore. We don't need permission from politicians to build. We can build our own businesses, train our own youth, and employ each other. From a rural village in Limpopo to the street of Soweto, We are capable. We are talented. We are powerful. Imagine if every one of us committed to building just one business that trains and employs others. A hair salon, a car wash, a shisanyam, a tech startup, a farm, a transport service. This is the new struggle, not for freedom. We've won that. The struggle now is for economic independence, for dignity, for ownership. And we won't win it through votes. We'll win it by action. That's why we are launching something big in our area. A space built by us, for us. A space where rural youth can get skills, where jobs are created, where money stays in the community. It's just the beginning. We can't transform this system. We must replace it with our own parallel systems, community-owned businesses, empowerment without politicians. So here's your mission. Start something. Support someone building. Invest in your people. If not now, when? If not us, who? This is Inkarhi. It's time. The time to build is now. The time to rise is now. Subscribe, share, take action. Thank you for watching and take care.